Begin this Sunday address, let me start by saying that it will be a frank and direct discussion of swirling, with an emphasis on black women who have taken part in it. Since swirling is a primarily black female-driven subculture, emphasis on the sub part, there's no way that we can talk about it without discussing its rabidly passionate adherents, who in this case happen to be almost exclusively black females. Now, obviously, just because all swirlers are black women doesn't mean that all black women are swirlers or even want to be. So please exercise some common sense as you listen to my remarks. While it is true that a certain amount of groupthink has set in among black women as a group, and this will be touched upon here and again throughout the address, it is not fair to say that there aren't black women who don't chase interracial fantasies, which will also be touched upon in the address. Again, if you aren't the one exhibiting the behavior being spoken about, then most likely it's not in reference to you. Now, that said, let's get on with this Sunday address. Now that the queen bee of swirling and black male bashing has been crushed by the very object of her affection, I wonder, will black women as a group understand what's happened? Now that you've heard a white man say everything that Jason and I have told you for a decade now, and heard this white man say the more you degrade yourself, the less that he likes you, do you finally get it? One of my favorite movies is The Departed. Leonardo DiCaprio plays a cop sent to infiltrate the Boston mob. While he's being recruited for this assignment, his superior says to him, "We deal in deception here, but what we don't deal in is self-deception." In the interest of not giving this fading phony any more attention than she's already managed for herself, which truth be told really isn't that much, we're going to avoid using names as much as we can. After all, Jason Black already lit into the Queen Swirler, but in case you missed it, here's the gist of it. The Queen of Swirlers has been a professional black man-hater for years. She started a so-called website devoted to praising white men simply because she's been the top diva of swirling, and I guess she thought years of man-stroking white males made her popular in their eyes. Well, she got her wake-up call. She had an online chat with a white YouTuber calling himself the Veganator. Before I get started, yes, he is one of those white male MGTOW fellows who obsesses over bodybuilding. That should have been 3 red flags right there. As a black man, I specialize in pattern recognition. Shame that so many black women like the Queen Swirler do not. Anyway, the Queen Swirler was talking to the Veganator. Apparently she thought that he was going to lightly rebuke swirling, or at least express some mild misgivings about it. And she figured that if she just gave him a pat on the head, that he would go ahead and praise her. But instead, he ripped into black women and into swirling and into her. He read her behind up one side and down the other. He pulled out all the golden oldies about how bad black women in general supposedly are. He quoted the 50% STD stat, the motherless rate stat, the overweight stat, the sexual promiscuity stat. Her would-be bed of roses got turned into a dumpster fire. Needless to say, the Queen Swirler deleted that video. So much for not hiding white men's true feelings, huh? In the aftermath, after the Queen Swirler recovered, she tried to make another video. Alone this time, and she was a crying, distraught mess. If you want to see an excellent analysis and commentary on this video, check out Jason Black's Black Authority channel. The video is called When Swirling Goes Wrong. Links in the description. You'll have to watch it there because the Queen Swirler deleted that video from her channel as well. But this is the internet, where nothing ever dies except your dreams of a swirling future, and she was boo-hooing about how horrible it was that this white guy was excoriating black women, and that people were loving him for it. That white men found they could run black women into the ground and become popular as a result, and how terrible this all was. And then came the icing on the cake. She had the unmitigated gall to say that black men were pathetic because they didn't feel the need to come run in and defend black women from these attacks. I'm not making that up. Go watch Jason Black's breakdown of her breakdown, and you can see it for yourself. After all the years that the Queen Swirler spent saying only white men can protect black women, that black men aren't worthy of black women, and black women don't need black men, when her white knight went barbarian on her, who did she go crying to for sympathy and support? Not other black women, but black men. Well, the Veganator had a few choice words for her about that video. Listen to the Veganator's response to the Queen Swirler's heartbroken histrionics.
But I prefer to just stick with my own race because that is what I am comfortable with. And you cannot force me into your agenda of swirling. Now, as far as there was no good men that came to defend you or your swirlers, let me offer you something that the MGTOW community likes to give out. And that is a red pill. Now, as I keep going down this rabbit hole of the swirling movement, I realize just how crazy and delusional you have become with how the dynamics of how men respond to women in certain situations. For example, you co-sign with other black women who constantly bash and blame black men. Let me ask you this first. Why would a good black man rescue you, especially when you bash these men or talk about ridiculous things such as supposedly starting a movement such as the No Negro Sex Diet, aka birthing no more black babies? When you hop the fence into the white community and you leave behind your own community, you're not going to be protected by us white men, especially us MGTOW. We are done putting up with our own women's dysfunctional and irrational behavior, but at least when we criticize each other, we do not constantly bash each other out or talk about wiping out our own race. So expecting white men to come protect you is just ridiculous. And then trying to fall back into your community for help because other races of men are not helping you out is not going to happen, especially from respectable black men. What incentives or benefits would they get from helping you out? I mean, especially with the examples I presented earlier. And it should also be noted that respectable black men are the original MGTOWs, but that's another story.
Did you get that? The Queen Swirler may be dedicated to the annihilation of the black race, but these white guys she's so hot and bothered over are not dedicated to the elimination of theirs. Race comes first to them, and they're not interested in a woman who actively devotes herself to trying to tear down her race and outright destroy it. I told you that almost 10 years ago with R.I.P. Black America. Women in general, of all races, may not necessarily care about ethnic loyalty as much as men, but if you want a man, then it damn well better be important to you. You will not dictate to any man what he should think about that. And to see her boo-hooing about how black men aren't coming to her rescue, well, when you're strong and independent, that's what it means. Without black men, black women become an endangered species because nobody, and I mean no freaking body, is coming to help. White guys know this. And this Veganator guy told her that, point blank. He said it himself, that she had been bashing black men for years and that he, a white man, fully realized that he could attack the Queen Swirler, the crier, with impunity because he knew that she had no support and no protection from black men. He was not concerned about a backlash or any sort of rebuff because white men understand that black men are the armor that protects their community. Someday these black women will get out of their pride and out of their feelings and see this pig simple reality. Black men, even in our degraded state, are still the only protection that you have. Without us, white men see you as easy prey, and they will go in on you in a heartbeat. This white man lit into black women, and he knew that he could get away with it because he understands what a lot of black women don't. Only the black man can check a white man. White men do not fear black women, even those who oppose him. You are not a threat to him. But the white man knows that black men do not submit to other men. Our nature won't allow us to do that, unless you're a coon. Women submit, men don't. So black men are and always will be a threat. Give us some tokens, and most likely we'll try to use them to build a power base and challenge whoever gave us the tokens. This veganator guy knew precisely what he was doing. There's a reason you don't see white guys on YouTube just going in on black women, because most of the time they're not sure which black men are going to be backing them up. And when push came to shove, the Queen Swirler didn't cry out for black women to take her part. She cried out for black men. I repeat that because it's important for you to keep in mind. There is no such thing as white men being the natural protectors of black women. If you still want to cling to that lie, then please ask the white guys where they are when they were supposed to be defending your honor. Because the Queen Swirler always knew that she was perpetrating a fraud. The sisterhood has always been weak and flimsy, as we've always known it to be. The Queen Swirler and her ilk have been living a lie, and when that happens, waking up is worse than any nightmare. How could she and the wannabe swirlers have been so wrong about white men? Here's how. After decades of matriarchy in our community, black women have become accustomed to telling black men what to think. So many of them now believe that they can give white men their opinions too. The dominant society allows you to boss your black boyfriends around, your black sons and black ex-husbands. But when you call yourself trying to tell a white man what he should or should not think, especially about black women, well, you lost that fight before it even began. Because truth be told, that's what all the ass-kissing that the swirling fetishizers do is about. It's supposed to be a gentle way to seduce white men into thinking what black women dictate to them. Well, how's that working out for you? You won't see too many tales of black women finding bliss in a white man's arms on the Queen Swirler's site, but what you will see is a non-stop torrent of black women saying, "Black men ain't spit." White men can see this. And every time the Queen Swirler and her coterie of professional white-ass kissers stop to bash black men, it reminds whatever white males might have taken a look that her real obsession is actually hating black men. Nobody wants to be caught up in your psychosexual dysfunction. And she thought that surely all this man-stroking would make white men worship her, which is what she thought the effect would be, but instead it's disgusted them. You want to know why white men fetishize Asian women so much? Because during the Second World War and Vietnam, Asian women showed that they were willing to die for their men, showed that they were willing to die for their country. To a man, that is a language that he can understand. And when he sees a woman who is eagerly ready to lay down her life for the man in her life, that is irresistible. When a woman shows her total ready-to-die devotion for the society that produced her, it makes every man want her because he wants that loyalty for himself. When a woman whores herself, on the other hand, to foreign men, that reduces her value in the eyes of all men. You're desperate and they know it. Worse than that, you are loyal to nothing. A man understands that if it's easy to get you, then it will be equally easy to lose you. So why bother having you in the first place? No man with any sense will commit to that, because there's literally nothing to commit to. The Swirlers have sold themselves short, but then again, if you just listened to black men when we told you all this. The white guys see how black women throw themselves at white men's feet, and as I told you last year when I broke down why scandal is nothing but bedwenching, when black women fawn over white men, that raises white men's stock, not black women's. Every time you fall at a white man's feet, all you've done is to assure him that you're still gonna be down there tomorrow or next week or whenever he gets bored and needs a easy sexual conquest. Black women need to understand that black men are still men, and as such, we have a far clearer understanding of what a man, even a white man, values in a mate more than you will. And no man respects a woman who is rude, disobedient, combative, dishonest, promiscuous, desperate, or disloyal. And if you signed on to swirling, then you presented yourselves to white men as both desperate and disloyal. They've always felt this way about you, by the way. It's just that now some of them are feeling a little bit emboldened to finally come out and tell you. Ethnic loyalty matters to men. To women, not so much, but men have always been the source of resources for any society. So when you choose a loser as a mate, you do without. When you choose a man who has resources but hates you, at some point he's going to cut you off. That's the reality. The problem for black women is that they don't want to admit that they've done something wrong for 3 decades. So they've embarked on a strategy of justifying the crotch power culture that they've been following. To black women, not all, but certainly enough, to admit that they were wrong would be the worst thing imaginable. Have you ever been in an argument with a woman? And has she ever, even once, said that she was wrong? No. What she'll do is, she'll subject hop, shed tears for pity, throw a tantrum, try to argue until you give up. But what she won't do is to admit that she made a mistake. This isn't woman bashing. This is a simple statement of the female condition. Now, in relationships, this is damaging, but when you apply that type of stubbornness to a social group, it's genocidal. Black male bashing, swirling, better off alone, all of these are the tactics that have been employed to avoid having to say, "We screwed up." And unless they admit it and admit what the mistakes are, then the screwing up isn't going to stop. Jason Black said years ago that white men are not looking to be the lords of a biracial ghetto. That's a pretty unambiguous statement. White men have been sleeping with black women since the first European set foot on African soil. The most racist white men in American history have been notorious for sleeping with black women. Thomas Jefferson spent 3 decades raping Sally Hemings, and he's the one who wrote the part of the Constitution that said blacks are only 3/5 human. Well, apparently Hemings was human enough for old TJ. Strom Thurmond was having sex with a black woman for years, and this was before and during the time that he was the patron saint of white supremacy. In fact, in the 1950s, he said this.
There's not enough troops in the army to force the Southern people to break down segregation and admit the Negro race into our theaters, into our swimming pools, into our homes, and into our churches.
Well, it didn't take any federal troops to put a black woman in Strom Thurmond's home, and even in his bed. He decided to arrange for that one himself, and he even fathered a bastard daughter by the black woman that he'd been sleeping with. All the while he was cheering on the very Klansmen who were murdering black people and telling everyone that black people were less than human. When will black women realize that your crotch may be magical to you, but to a man it's just a warm place to put his pride and toy? You can deny that truth, but considering that even after decades of proving that your crotch has no power, we still have women out here all day, every day, trying to use it as such regardless. So clearly somebody's lying here. Ladies, you've created a bubble for yourselves, and the white media has furnished this bubble with all sorts of ridiculous fantasies, and many of you may well have bought into your own BS. And the most dangerous part is that you're being deliberately self-deceptive about the most powerful and most anti-black faction on the entire planet. You have been sitting here playing with a venomous viper, pretending that you've been enchanting him, when the truth of the matter is, he's just been waiting for a moment to strike. But here's the real hell of it all. Even if white people were giving you more than a few token crumbs, even if some of them actually liked you, that wouldn't make what you've done right. Black women have tried to navigate their way through the world crotch first for fully 3 decades now. And no matter how you keep denying it, you know as well as we do that you think your crotch is some sort of magic well that controls men like puppets, and it doesn't. You may think you're fooling men, but you're fooling no one but yourselves. Too many of you have invested in your crotch. It's your only commodity and the only trick you know. So when a man finally levels with you, you're heartbroken. You haven't bothered to ask or learn what a man truly wants from a woman, so you have no other man-catching skills than to throw your legs open, and while that may get a man into bed once, it also guarantees that he will see you as nothing more than recreation. So do you get it now? The pathetic dating books you read are nothing but feel-good fare written by women trying to sell you on the idea that men like a woman who is self-centered and narcissistic when we don't. So-called dating books are meant to psychologically masturbate you. You read them and feel, yeah, dating is all about what I'm going to get. Even though it's not true, you insist on that anyway. But have you ever wondered why books on marriage aren't popular with women? Because that requires an adult mentality. In dating, you can require that you be catered to, but in marriage, you can't. While I don't think that this is the death of the swirling nonsense, I do think that it's a turning point of sorts. Certainly, it's a seminal event. White men have now gone on the record in no mistakable terms that they are not going along with your program. Sure, the Queen Swirler will try to put a pretty face on this loss, which is why she took the video down of her having a breakdown. She probably thought that it would be cathartic, but all it really was pathetic. And as I've always said, cooning and bedwenching are 2 careers that don't come with a retirement plan. And this brings me to the second subject of this Sunday's address, closely related to the first, the ongoing lynching of Nate Parker. The American Film Institute has an annual film festival, and they've now announced that they will not be showing Parker's Birth of a Nation. As I told you in a prior address, this is the same American Film Institute who for decades declared D.W. Griffith's original Birth of a Nation the greatest film of all time. It was clear that they did not like Nate Parker appropriating what they saw as their ethno-cultural icon. They've hated Parker's project since the moment it was announced, so it's no surprise that they've panned it. This is O.J. Simpson all over again, and some people refuse to see it. There has been a non-stop lynch mob going on, jumping from one black man to the next. If lynching fails, then they assault you. If assaults fail, they spit on you. And it's hard enough dealing with this daily lynch mob without some bedwenches always feeling the need to lead it. I've seen a lot of scorn being heaped on Nate Parker, and the shame is that in many cases there have been black women leading the charge. But I think we know why some of these disaffected black females have been doing it. You know, when the Duke lacrosse scandal went down, black men didn't care a damn that the accuser was a prostitute, or that she had willingly gone to a frat house and let a bunch of rednecks run several trains on her. Black men didn't make an issue of her single mother status or the other allegations against her. Black men have never allowed a black woman's fetish for white men to blind us to the reality that we're under a system of racial domination that's trying to annihilate us. We don't allow our internal disputes to ever become external, at least not where black women being attacked by white men is concerned. Though in far too many cases now, black women never seem to think that it's the wrong time to spit in black men's faces. Many of them see themselves as on a jihad to raise their stock at the cost of black men's. From Sally Hemings to Strom Thurmond's mistress to Bill de Blasio's wife, whenever you see a white man attacking the black community, in too many cases, there's a black girlfriend or even wife nearby. Say what you want about black men marrying white women, God knows I do. But you never see Clarence Thomas's wife talking trash about the black community. Same for James Earl Jones' wife. Same for Kim Kardashian. A black man gets a white wife and she stays in line. That's because she is not the leader of her group. So it's okay for her to defer to a man, even a black one. The dominant society doesn't give a damn how many black men you help them lynch. It will change nothing for you. That's the lesson of the Queen's Swirler's wake-up call. It's one thing to gender war online because neither black men nor black women has the power to do anything to the other. But when you co-sign the dominant society's attacks on black people, that's treason. Because they do have the power to harm us and exercise it daily. And the first step of attacking a group of people solely based on their race is to sell the idea that you are not doing it based on their race. With the dominant society, it is never just an attack on one black man or a particular black woman. They use individual black people as proxies for us all. And when you take their side, you have not merely given them cover to attack us, you're giving them the green light to do so. Under white supremacy, nothing happens inside a vacuum. Do you think the Willie Horton ads George H.W. Bush ran were so effective because white voters were scared of Willie Horton himself? Do you think the vilification of Tawana Brawley was because she herself was seen as a liar? Or O.J. Simpson was because white people were afraid that their formerly favorite football player might come after them next? White people are criticized as individuals. Black people are criticized as being representative of us all. No one is asking a single question about the sexual history of Nate Parker's lying accuser, but if she had been black, that's the first thing that they would have focused on. This isn't about Nate Parker. This is about common freaking sense and understanding when the dominant society is attacking you. It's one thing to be a victim. It's another to wallow in it. When I raised this issue before, some black women came at me saying, well, what about when black men laugh at Halle Berry's divorces or Aisha Tyler's divorce? White men throw black women under the bus, and there are black men who laugh about it. You cannot compare schadenfreude over a divorce to black women who have gone on record saying that black men have no virtue and to say this about a disproven allegation of rape. Black women should be extremely sensitive to the history of race and rape in America, and how when it's a black woman nobody cares. Black women know full well that rape allegations have always been used as an excuse to attack black people as a group. You may think it will stop with Nate Parker or that it will stop with black men, but it won't because it never does. Black women who have chosen to carry water for the bad guys on this one will find that they've played with fire. Black women, it's time for some hard truths. This perverted sisterhood mentality that many of you, not all but enough, have taken on is nothing but a lie. And now it has degenerated into a suicide pact. There's been this backward contingent of black females who have chosen to engage in a masturbatory pity party in the hopes that it would get them some sympathy from white people. And let's be honest, you have been seeking pity if you've been crying about your dating options. You don't feel good about yourself, so you want others, preferably white people, to feel sorry for you. And since they're not, some of you have chosen to lash out. Worse than that, you're helping the main people who have hurt and exploited you the most. You're scared to say a word against the dominant society because you depend on them for every crumb of your daily bread. So many black women have started looking for a safe target. These black females who engage in flagrant bedwenching have fragile egos, and it shows when Jesse Williams can't even protest the police killings of black people without awkwardly, very awkwardly, having to stop in the middle of his speech and psychologically masturbate some black women. But only them. And it would be one thing if black matriarchy was doing anything for us, but it's reduced us to our worst point since chattel slavery. So why did Jesse Williams have to do all that? Because the dominant society has propped black women up with a few minor perks, and while those perks have diminished, black women's insistence on being treated as the end-all and be-all has not. Asian men supporting race killer Peter Liang didn't have to diddle Asian women's egos. White men supporting every race soldier who's ever lived never have to give white women a pat on the head, no matter how many black men white women have slept with and married. Nicole Simpson was married to a black man, even as the dominant society would like to believe, was beating her repeatedly. White women never turned that into an excuse to make a plea for pity or praise under the guise that white men didn't appreciate white women enough. Clarence Thomas had numerous white women who he'd been accused of relationships with, but white women never used him to attack their men. When black women accuse white men of wrongdoing, white women never laugh in white men's faces and say, "See, that's what you get for sleeping with them." Cheering the dominant society on while they lay the foundation for the next campaign of attacks against us won't make them like you. It won't raise your stock. In fact, it lowers it. White men only respect what they cannot defeat, and being their cheerleading squad shows them that you're totally defeated. Black men don't fit the standard of handsomeness under white supremacy, yet our stock is higher than Asian men who are more resource-rich than ourselves. In fact, Asian men and black women are seen, if reports are to be believed, as the least attractive in terms of dating. But have you ever wondered why black men seem to have this type of immunity in the dating marketplace? There's also another angle to this that needs examination, and it's the joint interest that white men and some black women seem to have in controlling black male sexuality. Sexuality is private and personal, the most private and personal of things, except where black men are concerned. Black male sexuality is seen as public domain, in fact, as a public right. I've always said that the average white man is far more fixated on what's in a black man's drawers than any white woman ever could be. Well, that's not strictly speaking true. Many black women, not all, but certainly a sufficient number, have spent the last 3 decades going on a sex binge. Then they try to pretty it up by using all sorts of ridiculous flowery terms like exploring their sexuality or a healthy sexual appetite. But the truth is, it's whoring, not merely by the behavior itself, but by its results. Because I certainly don't see any of these black women who congratulate other black women for throwing their legs open, lightening their condemnation of Nate Parker. I don't see anyone saying that he's just exploring his sexuality. And let's be honest, Nate Parker's sexuality wasn't that big a problem until it was revealed that he had been sleeping with white women during college. That's the real problem that so many of these black women have with him. When they thought his wife was the only white woman he'd been with, they were peevish but not openly hostile. But now we're seeing a tsunami of phony outrage by some black women who are claiming solidarity with white women who are not being raped, even though those same white women don't give a damn when black women actually are raped. The black women who are piling on to Nate Parker are doing so because they identify with white women more than they identify with themselves. This is the actual motivation of the so-called Swirler movement. Nate Parker was found not guilty of rape, and the white woman who falsely accused him clearly had all sorts of problems. So why are there black women so eager to jump on board this lynching expedition? The reason comes back to ego. There is this rump contingent of black women who are psychologically immature. Nate Parker never did anything to a black woman. It makes absolutely no sense that black women would want to take a side against him. except that black women feel as if no black man who's going places would want to spend the rest of their lives with them. No one berates Aisha Tyler for having been married to a white man, and even though he dumped her, she's still calling him the love of her life. Same with Halle Berry. She can't keep a man, especially not a white one. This is why, even if white men woke up tomorrow and became totally colorblind, it would change nothing for black women's dating prospects. You can't make a man think you're worthwhile by trashing your own group. Men have a value system, ladies, and for most of us, ethnic pride is a primal part of it. When a man sees a woman trashing her own ethnic group just to curry favor with him, to that man, this is a mental disorder. You're trying to suck up to him by denigrating what you are, and that's the ultimate turnoff. It's patronizing and self-deprecating. You define what your value is by what you do, and when you devalue yourself, it's very hard to walk that back. White men know full well what they've done to black people historically and contemporaneously, and to see you denying it makes him think that you're a fool. This is why swirling has been and will always be a fool's errand. It's been tried in Brazil, and how did that work out? A man that you can manipulate is also a man who you can't respect. Black women have to stop trying to indulge sexual power fantasies and face reality. Now, while we're on the subject of Nate Parker, whoever he is sleeping with or has slept with is immaterial beyond the point that it actually affects us as black people. I do not smile on his choices, but it is his choice, and I'm more interested in what he does outside of the bedroom than in it. And if you don't think black women should be under scrutiny for sleeping with the leaders of the oppressor class, then please tell me, what leg do you stand on when you demand that Nate Parker continue to grovel and beg for your forgiveness for sleeping with the white man's natural mate? Because that's what the never-ending demands for Nate Parker to apologize from black women has really been about. There was a black woman on Roland Martin's show who actually said that Nate Parker hadn't admitted to what he'd done to the extent that she wanted him to. Keep in mind, this was a lawyer who didn't know Nate Parker, never met him, and never will. What on earth would he have to apologize to her for? Clearly, for a lot of black women, this is personal. It's not about whether Nate Parker did anything. They seem to understand full well that he's innocent, but rather this is about the feelings that they've gotten that a black man who's going places isn't going there with a black woman, and the disproven rape accusation is a safe shield for these black women to throw rocks from behind. Never mind the fact that they are setting up the exact situations that led to the destruction of the Black Wall Streets and the murder of Emmett Till, among many other atrocities. This is where the dominant society and the black women who are piling on Nate Parker are really coming from. They both want to see a black man on his hands and knees saying, "I'm sorry for having offended you. I'm sorry that I even exist." And this self-immolation will not benefit Parker any more than it did Isaiah Washington, because the point isn't to get an apology. It's simply to see a black man prostrate himself all day, every day. Because no matter how powerful Parker's Nat Turner may be on screen, the only thing people will remember is that off-screen, Nate Parker had to apologize to people who he'd done no wrong to, about an incident in which he had done nothing wrong. For the black women who have made a cause out of lynching Nate Parker, ethnic loyalty only seems to matter to the extent that they can find someone outside the race. Ladies, you need to understand something. Men of all races want the loyalty and respect of any woman who wants him to be with her. Loyalty, that means you stand by him, not by white women, and you don't make it a daily habit to trash him, especially not in a society run by his enemies. Secondly, respect. That means you understand him and consider him a man of honor and integrity, and that you appreciate and revere him for that. Not admitting to the wrong that you've done may help you save face, but it doesn't solve the problem. It's bad enough that you attacked black men in the past, but you're still doing it now, in full view of our enemies, which emboldens them, and you know this, and yet you still do it. That's the problem here. And finally, for those black MGTOW dead-enders who still can't let it go, please tell me where the white MGTOWs are defending Nate Parker. Those guys are always talking about how rape culture is a hoax, and many of the women in college who cry rape are lying to save their own image. But all of a sudden, the white MGTOWs are MIA. You know, as soon as I heard Nate Parker was an athlete in college, a wrestler no less, that was pretty much all I needed to hear. Many of the white women in college loved to have sex with numerous black men. Nate was just one of them. Clearly, this white woman had a wild night with Nate and some of his pals. She then realized later on that she could very easily be described as a slut and decided to embark on a scorched earth campaign to save her reputation. But even a white jury and white judge saw through her act. But white MGTOWs, however, don't seem so able to. Then again, that doesn't surprise me. As Veganator told you, white people don't throw other white people under the bus. The Queen of Swirlers has made herself the opponent of the black community, and she's received a hell of an embarrassment as a result. We can all agree on that. But the enemy of our enemy is not necessarily our friend. There's a lesson in that for most black women and more than a few black men as well.